All right, just figured I'd give an update on this. This is the state of the world I'm currently running. Um, Maybe in the last update you would have noticed that I think I was around 7,000 mutations. So there's been a number of setbacks um, since the last update. Basically, I was trying to make updates for the last, I think it was a couple weeks, and each time I did, and I looked closely at what was going on in the background, I'd find a bug in the code, and then I would fix it, but then I wouldn't feel comfortable continuing to run a world where the mutations had bugs in it, and it just, things wouldn't work normally anymore, so it's just better to start again from the beginning. I can go through the bugs quick. This was a big one here. Basically, it was an off by one error in the way I wrote the mutations. I had random next from 0 to available mutation -1. I had to just take out the -1. Yeah, a lot of these off by one errors. Like adding a random state. At 0 to 1, and I didn't know that the next just didn't include. Doesn't include the number that you have for the second parameter. In other languages, it does work that way, but yeah, I just mixed up my languages. Yeah, so there'd be like quite a few things that were where there'd be the mutation option would exclude one possibility. Like adding a random connection would always generate a final state. I didn't know the ramifications of not having that in. That's why I just restarted it after I found this error. I think I was nearing 10,000 mutations. That's kind of like the magic number I want to get to, and just see where things are at that point, and then decide whether it's worth continuing that one, or maybe design a new world and see how that goes. I noticed it when I added a new feature that allows me to export a single Turing machine into a file that will let me load it and view the components of it in the symbolic form. And what happened that made me notice it was I noticed that all the connections, the three properties of a connection are what you're reading, what you're writing, and what direction to move the reader head on the tape memory afterwards. And I noticed that they were all L or R. There were no S's. And the S's mean to just stay where you are, don't move the head either left or right, which isn't essential in a Turing machine, but I thought it was a nice feature to have, and it does make it easier for it to. There's ways to get around to have not needing the S. You can just use the L or R, but yeah. Once I saw that issue, I saw the issue at other places in the code, and then I just corrected all that. Off by one errors. And then I put this option where it lets me save off any of the machines I want, so it can be loaded in that program I used, that app that let you view a Turing machine. So I can demonstrate that shortly, and hopefully there's no bugs now. I think I got rid of all the bugs, but if there are, maybe I'll notice some. And at one point, I was experimenting with parallel threading, just try to make this app work faster. And it didn't work out. It didn't make it faster. Moment. Yep. So this was the next bug. So yeah, I had experimented with parallel threading. It didn't make it faster. In fact, it caused some glitchiness too. The way it was, things executing out of different orders, and it would send output to other machines 1 unit ahead of the time it's supposed to. And I thought I took it all out, but then I noticed that there was some left in there. Yeah, like this line here, basically. So, yeah, I put the old lines in there that were there before I added that in. So then I restarted the world again. I saw the way the Turing machines were like evolving, that they were kind of taking advantage of the glitchiness of that parallelism too, but that was not the way I intended it to work, so I took it out. And then when I was doing another update, I noticed that there was issues with the connections. The way I have it set up as a rule is the way when the connection between one state and another, the character it reads, there should only be one of those. But the way it was one line of code where it made it possible to create two different connections where it could travel through either one with a certain character that gets read. So you could have duplicate connections basically, and it was causing some weirdness. That was all because of yeah, I had this loop where I'm clearing out values that are already used from the state, but I was forgetting to assign it back to itself. I just needed to add this. It's a small thing. I looked around. I seemed to be the only place I did that. So hopefully everything's fine now. I mean, I don't. I'm pretty sure that there shouldn't be any more issues, but we'll see. I will look at a machine in a second here, and we can see if there's anything weird. But we can look at the machines. I also had a few more setbacks. So each of those bugs that were found, I had to start the machine over from the beginning. And in addition to that, after that last bug was fixed, I started the machine, or started the world over, and it didn't make it very far. When I started right before I went to bed, and then when I woke up, they were all dead. Just bad luck caused that. And then once I restarted it, then they didn't die. At least I let it run for 3 days, but then they started. It looked like they were finally doing something interesting. For a while, what they were doing is a lot of fancy maneuvering, and that was the only improvements I saw. But eventually, they started forming like rows, like little snakes or little snake motion, like groups, kind of like this down here. I mean, and then it kept doing that more and more. And then all of a sudden, they all formed straight lines going up and down. And then I thought, oh, maybe something big is happening here. It's either something really good or really bad. And then it turned out to be something bad, and they all died. Not too long after that, there was just rows of dead machines. They're all vertical, and they were all dead. And then what I did was, because I'm saving off the state of the world every million units of time, I just took the previous saved state, which was about 3 hours younger from the point where they all died, and then just continued it again to see if they would die again or not. And they didn't, not yet anyway. It's been like a day and a half since they died in that whatever happened that caused them all to die, sequence of mutations and luck, the way they spawn and whatever events that caused them to die. They seem to have gotten past. At least they've gotten farther than where they died last time. And hopefully, what we're seeing here with like this group activity, you see like a whole group of them traveling together here now. Hopefully that's a good thing, and this isn't something that just leads to them all dying again. there's randomness involving, or I guess there's that possibility that they could just get a lot of mutations that are just detrimental, or maybe develop a symbiotic relationship with the competitors, but then all of the competitors die off, and then they die off, and they're not able to adapt fast enough to not having the symbiotic relationship anymore. Maybe, I don't know. It could be a lot of things. So this is a good one, the one I have clicked right here. The max mutations on the whole map is 3,120. Yeah. The one I clicked is pretty close there, 3,114. 2,106. Yeah, I can click around. Yep, still no use of the saved global memory. Yep, it's not really using the transmission of data. Not really using the push object option either, or the memory. Just mainly the movement. We'll do this one here. So here's a new option. All right. So here's what that Turing machine looks like in symbolic form. All right. Food. So let's say there's one food in front of it, and then in front of that food there's a machine, and then another machine behind it. Pretty simple. It just decides to eat right away. Eat what's ahead of it. This is a neat option I saw in the program too. This JFlap app to show the Turing machines. It's got options to change how how the states are aligned, so you can maybe view them easier. So this wouldn't be a good example, but the have them be like a spiral or gem it's called. To circle and degree. And also, yeah, the hierarchy one was the one that looks like would make the Turing machine the most comprehensible. That's the one I had. So if it reads a U on the tape, it'll go down that route. A V, it would go down this route. And some of these might look pretty pointless, but it might have its own internal logic that it's using for some of these, kind of like the way I use lowercase letters for like using like variables so that it knows like rotate 360 and then move like left. I mean, it might be doing some of that too, so it's hard to tell uh, what's being used and not used and saved for the next unit of time. One thing that worries me as far as a limitation of this thing is like whether it's creating a lot of dead code. So if you can imagine, like, let's say this circle is all the Turing machine encompasses all these states and connections, but let's say in reality, Turing machine only uses all the states encompassed in the amount of the states encompassed by this smaller circle. And the problem with that is when it does a random mutation, it's going to pick a random thing in this whole circle and modify it slightly. And if this circle here just keeps getting bigger and bigger, full of dead code, it's going to make the mutation more and more useless. It'll still have the potential to improve, but I think you might see a slowdown. It'll improve like that. So maybe at some point I could add some code to track statistics, maybe on how many of the connections are not being used, or states not being used. Or maybe it crossed my mind to increase. I have the option to increase the rate of mutations to compensate for this problem. So if like there's like 100 times more likely for a mutation not to directly affect the behavior of the machine, then increase the rate of mutations by maybe 10 times more. 10 times more likely to get a mutation. Well, not 10 times more, because that's would be 100. But you make a mutation, the likelihood of mutation maybe 30% instead of 10. I do have the option to tweak those percentages. So there's that. And it also crossed my mind, maybe maybe this is a drawback of a Turing machine, having an evolving Turing machine, and maybe I should be using something else like a neural network. But I don't know. I don't know if the neural network might have a. I only looked into that a little bit. I could experiment with neural networks with the same concept, and even compare them. Maybe create a neural network type of approach, and you reuse much of the same code. Just have the part that does the computing will just be done by a neural network. All right. Well, that's pretty much it. So we'll just let this thing run for probably a week and see where we are. Or I'll make an update if something big happens otherwise.